Welcome. My name is William Messakar. I am a master model railroader in the 4th Division of the Pacific Northwest region of the National Model Railroad Association. I want to welcome all of you to the virtual layout tour we'll have presented today by members of the NMRA. We would encourage you to find out about the NMRA and join in order to participate in these virtual tours. We have other virtual clinics and other activities for the National Model Railroad Association that we think you'll find a big help to your modeling, and you'll get to meet model railroaders just like you. So welcome to our tour, and I hope you enjoy it.
So at this point, we're going to transition to a seminar on how to use Zoom. I'm going to kick it off with some slides about some of the features you may not have noticed in Zoom. And then we'll have a group discussion with everyone, but mainly featuring Russ Segner and Robin Peel, who just finished facilitating the Zoom National Narrow Gauge Convention that was going to be held in St. Louis. And so they have picked up some tips. I'm going to start off with the fact that if you start Zoom, there are two ways to do it. One way is to click on a link which is provided to you, which automatically opens Zoom, and the other one is to open your own Zoom. But the first time, if you click on a link, it's going to ask you to download something called the Zoom client onto your computer or your cell phone. I recommend doing this. I've been using the Zoom client for so long, I don't know what you do if you're not using it, but that's for someone else to discuss. This is what the Zoom client looks like when it's on your computer and you want to open a meeting. I find this very confusing. It says join, it says new meeting, which if I was joining it, wouldn't it be a new meeting? It says schedule, which of course is to schedule a meeting. That's a little different from joining a meeting. And I don't even know why share screen would be on here, because if you haven't joined a meeting, how could you share your screen? So I apologize to Zoom in advance for being so critical of the way they've designed this interface, but I found it nothing but confusing since I've started working with it. And by the way, I should also say during that time that I've been working with it, the stock price of Zoom has gone from under $24 to over $250 in 6 months. So they must be doing something right, but designing the interface was not it. Clearly, joining is what we're talking about doing. So you press on join, and you get the option to enter your meeting ID and password if you need it. Anyway, you'll see another box for the password most of the time. But I also want to point out that you can schedule a meeting that hasn't taken place yet by hitting the schedule button. And when you do that, you get an option to schedule the meeting, and you can pick the date and time and whether or not there's a passcode or a waiting room. And this is the security part of it that is now going to be required.
Burr,
yes.
just real quick. There is a free version of Zoom. And
yes.
this is, you could use this, and this will let you schedule your own meeting up to 40 minutes. If you go beyond that, you need to have purchased their Pro system, which is like $15 a month.
$120 a year. Go ahead.
This is Lisa. Also, what you can do if you want to keep the free is that you just know that every 40 minutes it'll bump you out, and then you just do a new meeting and invite everybody else in, and then they start. The other thing with this interface is if you happen to like Control-Alt to go to a different screen and you go back to Zoom, this will actually pop up and it'll say rejoin your meeting, and then that you can go also it'll change so that you rejoin the meeting if you happen to be looking through your desktop while you're watching a Zoom meeting, for those of us who try to do stuff while they're on a Zoom meeting in the background.
Yes, and for those of you who don't know Lisa, she's also a member of today's panel and is the coordinator of the North End 4DPNR clinic and has been doing a lot of these Zoom meetings. My main point is to point out little things that you might not necessarily notice in Zoom. One of them that took me a while to get used to is hidden up at the top here is this home. This tells you that you're looking at the so-called home screen of the Zoom application. But there's also one called Meetings, which I find extraordinarily weird because the whole purpose of the home is meetings, and there's a bunch of discussion about meetings here, but we're not in meetings. So let's look at what's over in meetings. You go to meetings, it gives you a list of all the meetings that you have scheduled. And as you can see today, I had a rehearsal with Scott for this meeting today on Thursday, and we're doing this layout tour today. And it looks like I better get organized about scheduling some of the future meetings because they're not listed here. Another feature that is nice about this meetings section is you can copy the invitation and it puts all the information about your meeting, like the meeting ID and password, onto your clipboard on your computer so that you can paste it right into a message to invite someone. You also can click on this show meeting invitation and it gives you the entire email invitation to your meeting. And then you can check and see if it's correct. You can copy this and paste it in. But these two are just two different ways of doing the same thing, which is to share the information about your meeting.
You can also use the edit feature there to change the title of the meeting. So people would understand that you're
right here,
sending them an invitation to a very specific meeting.
Yes. One important thing that I found out is they make it very, very difficult for you to find out which version of Zoom you're currently running. And you can find that out by going to this little icon over here. Now, I have a picture of my face here because if it was my initials, it would be BS, and I don't really like that, so I put my picture. And Bill Messicar has the same problem, so he immediately puts his picture in here, but the rest of you can just let it be. And of course, my profile is where you can insert a little photograph of yourself to tell yourself that this is who you are. In here, there are three things worth knowing. One is that you can get into all the settings from here. And then also, this is where you check for updates, and it'll tell you whether or not you have the current version. And then you can easily download the current version. But that's worth doing because sometimes they make changes and you are fussing around with the Zoom, not realizing you don't have the current version. There are a few people that have challenges because they use more than one account. And there are several people on the call that are in this category. And this is how you can go in and make sure that you're logged in as the correct person to Zoom. And so that's just something I wanted to mention to you. So now, remember, we're talking about settings here, which, like I said before, we found out by going to our little icon in the upper right-hand corner. There are all these different categories of settings, and there are only a few of them that really matter. So I'm just going to whip through here and just let you know that there's a lot of ways that you can have a problem with Zoom simply because the setting is wrong. Yeah.
Let me interrupt a second. But on the PC version, Windows version, there is a gear right underneath my photograph.
Yes.
And I think there's a gear underneath yours too. But
there's a gear. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's how you get the settings.
Oh, that's a really good point. The gear looks like this, but it's a gear right on your screen. That's a good point. Thanks, Al.
No, back where your photo was, where you were talking about your photo.
Up here?
Yeah.
If you go forward to the next slide, you could just see peeping out between your picture.
Oh, this gear here. Oh, that's what Al's talking about. That's a really good point. Underneath this is the gear setting, which gives you all these settings. So you don't have to go into your own icon. The only reason for looking at this is to make sure if you're using more than one computer monitor, you want to let them know that. Now, on video, there's a bunch of things which I'm not going to discuss. Audio.
The output volume is kind of an interesting one, Burr. Often people, when they're speaking, others cannot hear them clearly. So I think you can adjust the output from your presentation.
Yes, and of course, if you're not hearing the Zoom meeting, you could have an output problem. And it's nice the way they have the testing set up so that you can figure out what's happening there. The thing I want
very specifically, Burr, that input volume from your microphone. Most people, it's automatically set to where that little checkbox says automatically adjust microphone volume. So it tries to get the right volume for whether you're using a headset like I am right now, or you're just yelling at your computer. It tries to figure that out. If people keep saying to you, you're really faint, we can't hear you should probably switch that off and switch that slider up to the right. Then your input, your voice will then become stronger. But you have to, that's just a testing for you. Those of us who use them a lot, like Lisa and I, you can see we use it all day long, every day, and other things too. We use headsets because it cuts out background noise, the dog barking, the leaf blower down the street, and so on. We tend to use headsets. But sometimes if you're doing it all day, you just want to throw your headset in the trash and just take the stupid thing off. So then you have to be fairly careful about making sure that you're being heard and you're not too loud and not too soft. It usually does a good job of that automatic setting, but sometimes, if you're speaking softly or you're leaning back in your chair and looking the other way, it won't pick you up very well.
So do you leave the automatically adjust on or off?
I usually leave mine on because I'm using a headset and it figures it out just fine.
Right.
I don't use a headset and I do leave mine on.
It usually works fine that way.
Well.
I have a brief question here. I was looking at the 4D PNR presentation on this Zoom thing, and two of the vendors' presentations were very badly garbled. Is there anything in here I could have changed to straighten that out?
Are you speaking of the ones from St. Louis?
Yes.
No, that was in the presentation that they did, and it was very unfortunate. We're going to try to re-record the one, particularly from Mount Albert.
Mount Albert.
And one of the problems was he was not wearing a headset, and so when he would face away from his computer, his voice trailed off.
Yeah.
As an
But
example.
the key point for this presentation is that is a YouTube video you're watching off of a completely different computer program. So it has nothing to do with Zoom, except that we recorded it in Zoom, but we then played it back for you in YouTube. So we have to go back and fix that with the original recording.
Thank you.
Or you might mention that the line under microphone that says built-in microphone is where you would pull down a choice of headset or internal microphone or whatever else you're using. Same way with the speaker above. Where yours says same as system, but if you're using a headset, you would want to use the headset there.
That's right.
And that's how you choose between what you use for mic and speakers.
And there's a lot of redundancy in this whole program, so you can also do that from the main screen, and we'll show you that as well.
But just one other quick thing to add. You got into this by going to Zoom application and going, as you said, your little picture and settings and so on.
Yes.
Actually, when you're in a call, like we are all in a call right now, you can actually get to these very same settings by going to the bottom of your screen, and where it says mute or unmute on the bottom left, there's a little up arrow next to it, and at the bottom, if you click up arrow, the whole bunch of stuff again, too much, but some shortcuts to pick the right microphone and right speaker. At the very bottom of there's a little option that says audio settings. It will bring up this exact same screen you're looking at. So in the course of a meeting, if you think, I'm sick of this headset, I want to switch it off, or I need to adjust my volume, that's where you would do it whilst you're in a meeting or even whilst you're presenting. So you don't need to go through the actual Zoom app right at the beginning and do it. You can do it in flight, as it were, during the course of a meeting from the little settings that pop up down there. And the same for the video settings, where it says stop video or whatever at the bottom left of your screen. That has video settings where you can change your video settings, which are the ones right above where Burr is right now. So there's different ways of getting to the same thing.
The key thing I wanted to point out here is that we are all very fond of saying to you, if you want to speak, you can press and hold the space key on your computer and you can unmute yourself. But in fact, that only works if this setting is clicked. Press and hold space key to temporarily unmute. I just wanted to be clear, if you find yourself with that not working, go into your settings and make sure that you've asked it to work. And I've had this happen to me, and I wanted to point it out to you.
As a protocol, we try to have the meeting set up so that people will come in and mute themselves automatically, because almost always in large groups, you have somebody with a barking dog or a kid crying or something, and inadvertently not being aware that the mic is on.
Share screen. Does anyone have anything to say about share screen? I'll demonstrate this a little bit later.
Yeah, there's not much to say in the settings. We'll get into actually when we do it. I don't really think around with that.
In background and filters, you can have no filter or no background. It just shows whatever the camera sees. Or if you have a fancy enough computer, or a green screen, you can put a picture behind you. This is where you do that. You click plus and you can see I've added some nice pictures of my various layouts in here to use as backgrounds, like the one you were seeing from me before. This is a cheap, quick and dirty green screen I just hung behind me in order to do what was necessary to show you that picture, because on my computer, which is 6 years old, it's required for the system to have a green screen because it can't process the background otherwise. Accessibility, I wanted to point out that you can turn on closed captioning and the system will actually type out what people are saying while they're saying it. And you can change the size of the type in the closed captioning. And this is a really nice thing to do if you're having trouble hearing. You can let the computer see if it can translate what's being said. So we're back to the main screen. These up arrows next to the microphone and the video is where you can make a lot of those settings. The reason I have this slide is to show you this handy little thing. When you're in the main circle, there's a little tiny circle up there. You see in the upper left-hand corner? If you click on that, it gives you, again, the information about your meeting, and it allows you to copy the link to your clipboard, or you can just copy this information out, or the meeting ID and password, and send it to a friend. Now, I just want to take a minute to say, if you're doing this from a phone, it gives you a completely different layout of the app, but this does have the same 4 little squares for joining a meeting. And if you do try to join a meeting, which is the center one, it'll ask you to enter the meeting ID and password and give you keypads so that you can get on with your phone. And I know some of you have been able to do that. Now, having gotten into the meeting, there are 2 views, the 2 ways you can look at the meeting. One is to look at everyone who's in the meeting. And in this case, it's me and my cell phone that have joined this demonstration meeting. But there is also something called the presenter view, where you only see whoever is presenting. What it shows here is the icon for the gallery view, because you're in the gallery view. But if you want to go to the speaker view, you need to press this button and then change it.
When you're in one view, it shows you the other view, saying what it's possible to go to, not what you're in, if that makes sense. The best thing is just click around and see what happens. You're not going to break anything, particularly if you're not presenting. If you're presenting, don't do that because people might care. But if you're not presenting, click around those options on top right and see how it changes. So for some of you who have speaker view on, I'm probably filling the middle of your screen, and I apologize for that. If you have gallery view on, it's probably that, it's like that celebrity squares view of everybody on top of each other with usually a little yellow outline around whoever's yakking at a particular point in time.
So now the problem here is I've entered the meeting twice with the same name, and you can't really tell what's going on. So there's another feature that's very nice to know, which is called rename. So I can change what's printed out here for everyone to see. So if I go into this more over on the right-hand side, you can get the blue more, and you can click on rename, and you can enter a new name, which in this case, I decided to call it Burr Stewart's iPhone. And I clicked rename, and now it shows up in the screen as Burr Stewart's iPhone. I can go back and do the same thing with my other one and change it to Burr Stewart laptop. So now there's no confusion on the screen about which screen I'm looking at. And I recommend doing that if your wife's name is Judy and that's the name of the laptop you're using. You can change it to be your own name.
And by the way, Bert, to get to where you were, by the way, there is that button at the bottom of your screen, which I don't know if you have it on a screenshot there, which says participants, and that allows you to see the complete list of participants on the right. And you can look through and see who is here whilst everybody else is talking. So there's 100 people there. You can step through and see all the people on the call, and so on. And if you wanted to, you can use that chat functionality to talk to anybody on that list privately. If you want to, give some useful word of encouragement or criticism, you can do that on the chat to individual people or to everybody.
We're in the participants right now, and these are the 2 participants. I just wanted to show you that at the bottom, there's a more arrow that has some features to it as well. that can be useful, especially if you're hosting a meeting. You need to allow participants to rename themselves in order for that option to be available to them, as well as allowing participants to unmute themselves. As Robin was saying, there's a participants button at the bottom, and then there's a chat button. And if you click the chat button, you get the chat room, and then you can type messages down here, which will pop up in the public chat room. But I also wanted to point out that there's a little tiny down arrow here, and this will get rid of this chat box if you want to get rid of it. And the same goes for the participant screen. So if you want to see the full screen and not have this there, these little arrows will get those away for you. And this little button down here in the two will give you a choice of who you want to send a message to. So you can send a private message or a public message. And sometimes the host will disable that so that, because they don't want you chatting with each other privately. That's an option the host has. I shared with you in the chat room today the document on using Zoom that we put together using this little file feature, which allows you to take a file and pop it right in the chat room. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about share screen. I just wanted you to know that the host has an option to distinguish between these two choices. One participant can share at a time and multiple participants share. If multiple participants is clicked, then it is not possible to optimize for video because it takes too much bandwidth for multiple participants to share simultaneously. So it's important for the host of any meeting to click on one participant if there's any video involved in the meeting. You can get at a lot of these settings from this little arrow. Here are the choices for which camera. And in my case, I have two cameras available to me, a webcam and the one that's built into my computer. When you press share screen, you get a pop-up window that allows you to pick which desktop, if you have more than one, you want to share. But the most important thing about this screen is that this is where you can optimize for video clip and make sure that the sound on your video from your computer is being shared to the meeting. A lot of people think if they press share screen, they've finished, but actually they've just started. It's a 4-click process where you have to press share screen, check and make sure you've got this the way you want it, check and make sure that you've got this the way you want it, and then press share again. And so pressing share once does not do the job. And that's the most important thing I want to say in this entire presentation is when you share a screen, pay attention to what's going on up here.
If you have a whole bunch of stuff on your desktop, private stuff you don't want people to see, when you do that share screen, you can choose not to share your entire desktop, but instead just share PowerPoint or Google Slides, whatever it might be. So you're just sharing to Zoom a specific application instead of everything that's on your desktop. Or some people keep personal stuff up there or shortcut stuff, or it's a work laptop. You don't want to see that and so on. You can share a specific application instead of your entire desktop or one of your desktops if you have multiple screens. So that's why there are so many options on that share screen about desktop 1, desktop 2, or PowerPoint or Chrome or whatever. You can pick and choose. So that flexibility, that just makes a few more choices to pick. But yes, you can be careful and selective about what you choose to share.
Once you're in share screen, there's a menu that shows up that nobody but you can see. Over on the side, you can click on more, and one of the options is to share computer sound and optimize screen for video. Remember that again from before? This is another way you can do it after you started sharing screen. But it requires remembering that you have to go over to this setting in your own private menu bar.
You might be wondering, why is Burr showing you this in some slides instead of showing it live and for real? And there's a weird answer to that. It's that Zoom doesn't let you share Zoom. So it assumes that if you're on Zoom, you don't want people to see, the inner workings of what you're doing behind the scenes. So you can't really share Zoom to teach someone how to use Zoom. It's kind of at one level clever, another level really irritating. It automatically removes Zoom from the screen. So the only way to do what Burr is trying to do to you guys today is had to take screenshots and put them in a presentation. And I think it kind of makes sense. It's like, Zoom doesn't want you, lifting the skirt and looking at what's going on somebody else's screen.
Right.
But it does make education really irritating. So that's just a point why Burr is having to do this with screenshots and not live.
The last really important thing that I want to share with everyone that's really useful is called pinning a view. And there are several ways you can do this, but it involves right-clicking on the picture that you want to pin, and this little blue ... will show up only when you click on a particular view in your gallery view. Say you wanted to just look at Robin's headset and see if you could figure out what brand it was, and so you wanted to make him bigger. What you would do is go to his little face in the gallery view, and then click on that little view, and then click on pin, and that would immediately make it look like this. It would pull up that view and it would fill your entire screen, and that's called pinning. And again, you get to it by simply clicking your mouse on the screen you want to pin and then asking it to pin.
One reason why that is very useful is very often in a group like ours, somebody says, oh, let me show you this, and they hold something up to the screen like that.
Right.
And then everybody else starts commenting on it, and then their face comes up on the screen instead, and you think, I just want to see what Robin's holding up instead of Burr's face or Russ's face, whatever, because as they comment on it, their face pops up. So the pinning will make sure you can just see me and not all the people interrupting with their really interesting feedback. That's a really useful for you as a participant to stop your screen being stolen by the people just saying, oh, that's cool. Shut up, I want to see what he's showing me, right? So.
And you can see down here, there's a little pin showing next to the name of this particular view. And if you click on this view, you'll get an option to remove pin. Actually, you can see it right up here. It says remove pin. So as soon as you want to unpin it, you just click there and you'll go back to your regular gallery view. The reason this is particularly important to me is on Thursday, I'm planning to have my first attempt at a virtual operating session on my layout. And what we're going to do is have a bunch of cameras on Zoom that will look a lot like this live, and you'll be able to see the trains moving around the layout. In the upper right here, you can see the one camera train that I have. But if you're driving this train, you would want to pin this video to your screen because you wouldn't be wanting to watch all the rest of this. And likewise, if you were driving a train through this yard, you would want to pin this view so you can see how you're doing before you move to the next location, which in this case would be Seattle Interbay Yard. And then you would unpin this one and pin this one so that your view is the view you want and not whoever happens to be talking at the same time, which was Robin's point. If you're interested in watching the fun of this, join us at 7 o'clock Thursday this week for Lisa's North End Clinic. And that is the rest. That's the end of my presentation. Of course, the end meeting for all is only a feature for the host, but you can always leave a meeting at any time by selecting that choice. Yeah,
I just have one more thing about pinning people, like screens. I think Zoom just put out that you can pin multiple participants, and I believe it's under the More option, because I was just Googling it, and I think as a host, you can allow people to pin multiple participants, so that may help with the virtual operating session on Thursday.
Yes.
So.
That would help, because you could pin the view of where your train is, and if you were getting to see the train from the cab, you could have both of those on your screen.
Yep.
With regard to putting together PowerPoint presentations, a lot of guys have asked me, well, I'm going to do a 35-minute show. I've got 84 slides. That's not going to work. So we've urged people to pare that down to something between 30 and 35 slides. That gives you enough time to pause with each slide to let people see the image, let it sink in so that they can formulate a question to put it up on chat or so on. Anything longer than that, it's going to run you more than 30 to 40 minutes. And we've tried to hold these shows to about a 45 to 50-minute timeline altogether. Just a very simple thing to request. The other thing is putting a video in a slide inside PowerPoint does not work. It'll work for a presentation if you're in a hall, like a clinic room or whatever, and you're presenting from your computer, that's fine. But when you're trying to run a video from PowerPoint through Zoom, that's too much, because Zoom doesn't want to handle that much information. So if you're going to share a video segment with a group of people on Zoom, put that video segment in as a separate file independent of PowerPoint. Just have it on your desktop as an individual slide.
PowerPoint, you've all heard of PowerPoint, I'm sure. It can be a little threatening to some people because it's got so many options and it can be hard to put it together right, and it's easy to mess up and so on. So like Burr was using Google Slides, which is free with Google. They have Google Docs and Google Sheets and Google Slides that do what Word, Excel and PowerPoint do, but it's free to use. It's very, very basic, but in many ways, I actually am starting using it for business a lot more because it's really easy to build cool looking stuff without getting lost in the complexity of the PowerPoint, which is often just what you need to do. And my company is generally using Google Slides now. So if you want an easy way to start that's free and requires minimal training, and there's plenty of YouTube videos out there, try Google Slides, which is what Burr was using. And it has most of the basic stuff you want from PowerPoint. And I'm actually been pretty happy with it. And it works across any platform, whether you're on a Mac, PC, Linux, iPhone, Android, whatever, it's fine on all of those.
There is one feature that I wanted to demonstrate in my presentation that I had on earlier. In the presentation, in the upper right-hand corner of all of my slides, I put a copy of my map. Well, you see on the little map, the star moves around by the location. If I click on this red star, it'll take me to the pictures that are associated with that scene. And it's a mechanism in PowerPoint which lets you link files. It just enabled me to demonstrate easily 8 different scenes. And if somebody had a question, well, what about the mill site? I can immediately go back to the mill site and show the plot plan and all of that.
If you're just participating in a meeting like today, all of those options are at the bottom, and feel free to change your name and play around with things. You won't hurt anything. That's great. If you really want to present something, please don't be afraid, because the 4 of us who participate today, Burr, myself, Russ, and Lisa, were happy to guide you through there and make it as painless and risk-free as possible. We've done a lot of successful meetings like this. So we're here to actually help you. If you want to present something, please don't be afraid of that. Perhaps a more advanced topic is doing a video tour of your layout using maybe your iPhone as a camera within Zoom. There's ways to do that, but we'll leave that for another day. But if you have a burning desire to show something, don't be put off by the technology. We will help you. And like Burr said, either he or I or Russ or whoever will have a practice run, a rehearsal with you, and make sure you've got it down pat. We'll make sure it goes smoothly for you.
One of our major goals is to encourage individuals to do presentations of what they're doing. It doesn't have to be a full-blown half hour or so. It can do a 3 or 4 minute segment, but you can do it with this technology and be confident that the people viewing it are going to get the message. Over time, we're going to build up a repertoire of clinics and topics and presenters. So this is an opportunity for anybody out there who's got stuff that you want to share to do so. And I encourage you to do it.
Dan
Thanks.
Kellogg had a question. Does Google Slides accept videos better than PowerPoint?
My response was, as far as I know, no. But I haven't tried Google Slides recently with videos embedded within them. I'll try it.
We can wrap it up unless there's another question.
Well,
Yeah,
Rich,
there is. I've got a question about software. I used to use Google's Picasa to modify pictures. That's no longer available. I've tried a couple different things, and I can't find anything that's remotely as simple and as powerful. What are the rest of you using for that?
You're talking about editing still photographs?
Yes.
I feel your pain to a degree. I used to use Picasa too, just for an easy way of looking at pictures and printing them with some modifications, and that's died. Now I'm a Mac user primarily, so now I just use Photos on the Mac, but it's somewhat limited. So I don't think there ever was a perfect replacement for Picasa, which is really irritating. Some people thought that Google Photos was meant to replace it, but it doesn't have, I think, that flexibility. for
Yeah.
manipulating pictures that Picasa had, which I'm sure you've figured out. So my short answer is no, I don't know, but yes, I feel your pain.
I'm using Photoshop Elements.
Yeah, that's what I use for.
Yeah.
And
100
that's a paid purchase
Yeah. Yeah,
just for
100.
Windows, I believe.
100,
Yeah.
$100 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in my normal just Windows program, there's an editing feature that you can crop photos and change some of the component parts of it.
I actually use Adobe Lightroom, and that seems to work out pretty good for me.
And how much does that cost?
Well, I buy the subscription version from Adobe. I get Lightroom and the full-blown Photoshop for $11 a month.
Okay.
On a Mac, I'm not an expert at these things. They confuse me, but I have been using GIMP, GIMP.
I was going to suggest GIMP because that's what
Okay.
I use.
And it's pretty capable, and it befuddles me, but that probably means it has the capabilities you want.
I'll give it a try. Thanks.
Was
Appreciate
there
your
one,
input.
was there one more question?
Irfan View is free too.
IRFANVIEW.
Yes. It's
Okay.
like GIMP.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think this is the time to close our meeting. Thank you all very much for attending, and we'll see you, if not at my layout on Thursday, in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Burr.
Thank you,
Well
Burr.
done. Well done.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Tatty bye.
Bye.
Hello again. This is another reminder that this virtual layout tour has been brought to you by members of the 4th Division of the Pacific Northwest region of the National Model Railroad Association. And we hope you've enjoyed it. And we want to encourage you to, again, find out about the NMRA online. Both PNR and NMRA have an excellent website where you can get information about joining and participating in this and other activities like our clinics that are held all over the region. So thank you for joining us today and wish you great modeling.